word drugs oftentimes holds a negative connotation in our society. Many associate drugs with dangerous, potentially illegal activity and harmful situations. Although the use of drugs can have detrimental effects, we cannot forget the positive results many drugs can offer. In recent years, there has been much debate over the legal status of one drug, marijuana. After being used for almost 5,000 years, many countries decided to ban it in the 20th century. While there are drawbacks to marijuana usage, compared to legal drugs, are they significant? Today we look at both sides of the story and decide whether these drawbacks are significant or merely over-exaggerated. Today, we'll be talking to Dr. Hatangi, an expert in the field of neurology.
Good afternoon, Dr. Hatangi. First, could you give us an overview on marijuana's effects?
Sure. Before you can understand how marijuana affects the brain, you have to understand how the brain works. The brain is made up of neurons, which are cells that send messages through the brain. Neurotransmitters are the chemicals that allow neurons to communicate information. The chemical in marijuana that causes the high is THC, or delta-9-tetrahydrocannabinol. Typically, the marijuana plant is smoked or eaten. Once the plant reaches the bloodstream, it travels to the brain. In every vertebrate animal's brain is a cannabinoid receptor, the receptor in the brain to which the THC binds to. THC mimics a neurotransmitter and blocks neurons from transmitting information. Because of this, those who take marijuana almost immediately experience a loss in coordination, short-term memory, and the ability to problem solve, as well as an increased heart rate.
Aside from short-term effects, what are some of the harmful long-term effects of marijuana?
THC is not the only chemical in marijuana. Cannabis contains large amounts of ammonia, hydrogen cyanide, and nitrogen oxide. Users experience many of the same health issues as cigarette smokers, as marijuana and tobacco contain many of the same toxins, and marijuana is most often smoked. Marijuana users have been proven to be at an increased risk for lung infections such as bronchitis, as well as an increased risk for lung cancer. However, no psychiatrists have ever linked or heard of a connection between severe mental illness and marijuana usage. Marijuana can have a minor impact on the brain. Cannabinoid receptors are located in abundance in the hippocampus, the part of the brain that controls emotions and memory, and the amygdala, which also controls handling emotions. Because THC stops messages from being transferred in these areas of the brain, frequent long-term use of marijuana can affect memory and emotion. However, no conclusive evidence can be found on the subject. Cannabinoid receptors are also found in immune cells, so marijuana usage may be connected to a decrease in the body's immunity.
I've heard that marijuana has medical benefits as well. Could you talk about some of these?
The medical benefits of marijuana are numerous. Marijuana has been accredited with relieving nausea, vomiting, menstrual pain, eye pain, and muscle spasms. Because it can increase appetite, cancer, HIV/AIDS, and anorexia, patients may benefit from marijuana when they experience a loss in appetite. Cancer patients also benefit from marijuana, as marijuana can stop tumor growth. It can also stop the growth of an enzyme that facilitates the growth of Alzheimer plaques, which are sticky clumps that prohibit neurons from functioning. Those with glaucoma are relieved of eye pressure after inhaling marijuana. If glaucoma goes untreated, over time, the pressure becomes so great that a person can become blind.
Thank you, Dr. Hatangi.
Next, we will listen to Dr. Burson, a medical specialist.
Good afternoon, Dr. Burson. Could you begin by talking about how alcohol affects the body?
Yes. The most obvious psychological effect alcohol has on the human body is its effect on the liver. Excess drinking over long periods of time causes fat to build up in the liver, which prohibits the liver cells from receiving oxygen and other nutrients. Eventually, these cells die. Scar tissue forms in the dead tissue's place. However, because the scar tissue is merely a protected tissue, it does not operate like the liver cells would. This is known as cirrhosis.
What other effects does alcohol have?
Well, most of us are familiar with the short-term effects of alcohol. Long-term effects is that it depresses your central nervous system as well as leaves a deep impact on your areas of thought, emotion, and judgment. Also, it impairs your speech and muscle coordination and induces you to sleep. Alcohol is deadly poisonous if taken in large amounts. It can cause life-threatening coma by depressing the pivotal centers of your brain.
Thank you, doctors, for giving us an interesting insight on the effects of marijuana and alcohol.
After hearing about both legal and illegal drugs, it is clear to me that there is a gray area when it comes to the legality of drugs. Although there are some drawbacks to marijuana, when compared to those of legal substances, they do not seem that great. And when you weigh the negatives against the positives, research shows that marijuana in moderation can offer positive effects. Much of the danger that comes with marijuana would not even exist if it weren't illegal. As one doctor said, the health effects of pot are not nearly as dangerous as the jail they throw you in for possessing it. Its illegality has put too high a price on the substance, so people are willing to get themselves into hazardous situations in order to get their hands on it. However, I am not advocating that marijuana immediately be legalized. It would be essential to do further research on its effects and look into the logistics of developing a marijuana industry. But from the information presented, it is clear that marijuana has benefits that would be unwise to ignore. However, while there is a gray area when it comes to the illegality of less serious drugs such as alcohol and marijuana, one thing that is very clear is that when it comes to dangerous drugs like heroin and crack, their drawbacks far outweigh their benefits.